Hello, it's Mike Evans here, the creator of cyberpunk animated YouTube web series and music project X-RL7. You know me, and I just thought I'd check in and do something a bit different with this Backstage video. Do something a little bit more informal, akin to the update video that I did at the end of the year, and talk about the Cyanide Songs EP, the latest EP accompanying episode 22, with the fictional band Cyanide and songs of different parts of their career. And yeah, so I just thought I'd do a track by track, something a bit more off the cuff, a bit more casual. We're going to look at some of the isolated musical elements. Basically, an interesting quick overview is this episode and these songs took over 2 years to come together. And that's not necessarily constant work. It basically means, well, I had most of the voiceover in 2 years ago, and these 3 songs that are written for the EP, they were written around that time as well. And it took a while to get all the files for the songs in. And the amazing, awesome Michael Joseph of Rockstar Esoterica, who voices Jared and sings in all the tracks. Such a great voice, such a talent. But it's come together finally, and it's so awesome that here we are. And these songs are finally out, seeing the light of day. And I think sometimes when things take a little bit longer, it benefits in a way, because you through the years maybe add something in there, or work with someone, a mixer or someone that you may not have known before, or whatever, things like that. And some awesome people that are voicing characters in episode 22 are... So we've got Lee Towson, who voices Smith, Ortiz, and the robot songwriting machine. We've got Laurie Baildon of Studio X voicing Patrick, always sensual Chris Voigt of Sexual Lobster voicing Razor. New to the show, we've got Matt from Caustic voicing Lance Lippe. We've got Roman Marisak voicing producer Mex, and Charlie Kennedy voicing producer Tess. Trina Duhart makes an appearance, so does X-Ray Girl, and of course Alan Rogers as Alfie, and of course the amazing Michael Joseph, who we'll be hearing from throughout this video. Like now!
Welcome back to round 2 of X-RL7 Backstage with myself, Michael Joseph. And in case you are unaware, I've been voicing Trey the bartender. I'm an actor! And Jared of Cyanide 6.
We're punk rock, man, not corporate rock.
And since Trey hasn't really been making many appearances lately, I guess we can recap where we're at with Jared. Cyanide 6 has risen to the top. They have entered into District 1. But things are not what they seem. We'll talk a little bit about some of the songs for the Cyanide 6 EP and some of the difficulties that Mike and I both went through in the process.
Well, we've actually got a new song we're working on where...
No, we need something fresh.
So the Cyanide 6 album, we got 3 new tracks, and then the 4th is a remix of Out of Control with kind of like this dancey vibe. And it's not really my scene, but it's kind of growing on me the more I listen to it, so it's all good. But out of the 3 new songs, ironically, the one I thought would be the most difficult to sing, the Sellout song, With You, actually ended up being the easiest one.
With you, so let's drive away.
And then the other 2 songs, Plastic People and Taste the Cyanide, leave it to Mike to write choruses right in the range that I call the crap range. I used more colorful language with Mike, but we'll keep it PG here. And if you listen to, online vocal instructors, I believe Robert Lunte talked about this, where the hardest notes to train are like these low head tones. And I think it's absolutely true, because the choruses were like right on that range, and there are these longer, more clean notes. It was just brutal. It just many takes, many frustrations. Mike and I were writing back and forth. We came to digital blows. We almost broke up the band. No, it's all good. Mike and I get along great. And then when you have frustrating moments, you might send a little venting email about the situation. But we made it work, and I think the final product ended up being pretty good. So we're happy about it, and we're excited. We did have some mixing frustrations as well. Sometimes you get mixes back, you have a different vision for them, and then you switch mixers, and then more and more money gets spent. And so props to Mike for dealing with all of that, because we were just dealing with that for one song, and I was frustrated enough. I can only imagine him dealing with this for all the other artists in the show. So show Mike some love and give him some support, and support him on Patreon because he really deserves it.
The order in which these were written actually was Taste of Cyanide, that was the first one written, and that was intended to show something of the band's past and when they're in their big, hard-rocking, unrelenting, uncompromising state. Then you've got the song With You, which is their producer, major label pop song, shall we say. And basically, I'd written those songs, and I thought they were cool, but I thought it'd be nice to have a song that was really hard-rocking and something which had a bit more commentary to it. So, after those, we hit Plastic People. And I'd like to show you some bits from these tracks that you may not be aware of, isolating a few little sounds and things like that, which may not be so obvious in the final mix. I suppose a good place to start is to check out the original guide vocal, which I did, which you can get on the Patreon. So for those unaware, basically with X-RL7 tracks, I will basically write a demo of it, and I'll record a guide vocal and send those to the featured artists, and they'll do a performance and kind of put their spin on it with their style. And this one was interesting because Michael Joseph contributed some lyrics to this track as well. I remember when that happened, it was interesting because I recorded this track and I thought, man, this is a huge song. It's like hard rocking, it says something, this is a tune. And I sent it to Michael, and he said that this track really inspired him, and he had some ideas for lyrics. I remember I was like, lyrics? What do you mean? Lyrics are written, dude. What do you mean? And we ended up getting on a Skype call, and he suggested some tweaks and changes, and so a few lines evolved, and there were a few I was quite adamant about not messing with, and yeah, it came out really well. There is an alternative outro which you can hear in full on the Patreon, and we'll have a listen to now. And the way that came about is I remember I sent an instrumental to Michael, and I'd made a mistake. Basically, I'd muted the guitars on the final chorus, and it was basically just drums and bass. And Michael had an idea of doing something a bit different there. Instead of going back to the straight up chorus, doing something a bit more existential and a bit more ambient, which did perfectly tie in with the theme of the track and this idea of Jared being in the big leagues but surrounded by all this superficial entertainment and all this industry stuff going on. So it made sense, and we got a demo of it, and that was pretty cool. But I remember through this time, months and months went by, between different parts of the project, different parts of these songs. And I remember at one point I was like, you know what, I think you can blame me for this. I said, I'd prefer to go back to the full-on double chorus, because I really wanted to do the halftime thing, because it does the chorus, then it repeats, but with the drums doing a halftime measure. And at that point as well, I'd met Avi of Art vs. Industry, who you will have heard in episode 20, I believe. Is it 20? Yeah. As the character Jordan. And he also contributed synths to the song Program. So he contributed some synths to this track as well. It's mainly in the chorus, and it just added some cool, as Michael says, Streets of Rage synths that sound really awesome, and just kind of give the chorus a little something extra. I suppose something interesting to show you as well is I had some harmonies in the chorus that I thought were pretty cool. And listening back to them recently, I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually singing the wrong lyrics. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, you couldn't tell in the mix. But here you go. Where's the substance we consume, the plastic people? But speaking of mixes, yeah, we've had an interesting time with mixing with this project. We've actually gone through quite a few mixes with various songs. Every track is mixed by a different person. And this song, initially it was mixed by Matt Doherty, who I'd worked with before in my band MiXE1. He had mixed our latest album, Reflections. And he actually mixed With You as well, which we'll talk about later, and he did a great job. So, Synth in Plastic People with, he's got a great track record. It's going to be awesome. And you can hear the Matt Doherty mix again on the Patreon. But we just weren't feeling it. It just, I don't know, there's something that wasn't quite as big as we wanted. I really wasn't feeling it. Because this was like a big, heavy song. This is like got to have lots of energy. And yeah. And in the end, I basically decided to send a song to Will Coulson, who mixed the last few X-RL7 releases. He'd mixed Program, Information, Overdose of Emotion. And honestly, like MiXE1, he pretty much nailed it. There was, of course, a bunch of tweaks to do, but it was pretty much there. And he just took that song and just annihilated it, and here we are. It's an interesting thing with mixing, and because what I found personally is it's interesting how you can give the same song to different people and they will tackle it sometimes in totally different ways. But when you get that first mix, you will usually get the opportunity to do revisions, and you can say, okay, let's make this louder, this quieter, this part needs more compression, blah 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 blah, more ambience on here. You will make suggestions to get it to where you want it to be. But what I found is you can make quite a lot of suggestions, but you're usually kind of within the gravity of that first mix. Like, the mix has got their sound and you can change stuff and tweak things, but you're kind of still always within that sonic template of that initial mix. That's what I found anyway. And so sometimes there's only so far you can go with a particular mixer. And it's not something I take lightly because it's expensive, and I don't like to... I prefer to give the song to one mixer, boom, done. But in this case, it seemed like the right move. The concept, the lyrical concept of this song is, it kind of timeline-wise, it's set when Jared he's in District 1, he's in the big leagues, and it's kind of a combination of a commentary on just superficial entertainment, or the shallow, nothing celebrities, the vacuous personalities in the culture, on TV or in the media, and the hypocrisies and industry-ness of it, and an illusion that points to the political nature of these things, where the politics are channeled through the celebrities onto you and me. And from Jared's perspective, feeling like he's gained the money and the notoriety, the fame, but at what cost? And is he happy? Oh, and the vocals that were recorded for this alternate outro actually still in the track in some places. The whispery, atmospheric stuff we ended up putting in the intro when the riff is playing, which I think is really cool. And you can still hear some of the outro screams at the end of the track. Okay, Taste the Cyanide. Oh my. This track went through quite a few versions. So this was like the first song I wrote after Out of Control, which is on the debut album, Apotheosis Music. That was the first time for Michael to appear on an X-RL7 track, and I was so blown away by his voice that I was like, oh, we got to do more stuff. We got to do some more tracks. And let's hear the mic vocal version on Patreon. Conceptually with this track, I was thinking there's a band I referenced in an X-RL7 Inspirations video called Oblivion Dust, which is a Japanese alternative rock band. And I was kind of channeling some of that energy when I wrote this from when the 90s part of their career, where they were quite raw and wild. And lyrically, it kind of doubles. It's kind of got two meanings, because even though it's very punk rock and very sort of like got that attitude, on one side it's about the band, wanting to expand and feeling trapped in their current situation or their hometown, which is the the cliche pop punk thing and just wanting to get out there and do their own thing and needing space. And it also doubles as, funnily enough, the most personal X-RL7 track of all of them, because every single song has something of me in it, some emotional, me going to a particular emotional place to write that song and channeling bits of my life. But this song, if you take out the Taste the Cyanide lines, it really doubles as a song about how I felt starting X-RL7, having big ideas and wanting to explore those things, and maybe I wasn't always getting that positive reinforcement from those around me about thinking that big, and just the guilt I felt in starting the project and leaving some other projects behind in order to do that, because I really felt so conflicted about that, but I felt like it was something that I had to do. But yeah, not to go into that, but it's quite a probably the most personal song, oddly enough, for being quite a punky track. So Michael put the vocals down to it, slayed it. And this song actually got mixed 3 times. 3 times. The first person I sent it to was Rawrb of Studio X, and he did a mix, because the thinking was he mixed Out of Control, and we love that mix. So, let's give him another Cyanide 6 song. And I think it was me, really. Like, Rawrb is a fantastic mixer and producer, and he's really good. But on this track, for me, I just kind of wasn't feeling it. It just didn't quite have the energy that I was looking for. And we tried to rein it in, and it just wasn't quite getting there on this particular track. So sent it to Kevin Coppola, who mixed a bunch of X-RL7 tracks, Heart-Shaped Hole, Digital Deities. I'm thinking, okay, he's got a more rock vibe, so I think he'll do great on this, and he did. He did a really fantastic mix, and it was sounding really cool, and we signed it off, and we're happy. And a while later, I think it was Michael checked it on some different systems, and he had some issues with it. It was like, oh, the project's kind of closed now. So it's And at some point in 2021, X-RL7, we released the track "The Show" featuring Blue Stahli, episode 16, I believe. And on that song, it was really cool because Bret of Blue Stahli, one of my favorite artists ever, such a privilege, so awesome to work with him. I feel so humbled and grateful. And he took the song "The Show," and as well as singing on it and performing the vocals, he mixed it, and he added a ton of synths and production, replaced some drums, and added these cool hip-hop bits, and really just took that song up several notches with an awesome production. And from that point, I was like, oh my god, that's such a great production. I want to maintain that level of quality. So I felt inspired, and I went back to the song "Taste the Cyanide," and I added some musical elements. On the initial version of it, I had used a synth guitar because, quite honestly, I couldn't be bothered to record a real guitar. And the way I do guitar is I do this Joey Sturgis technique, where I edit everything really tightly in time, so everything's really tight. It takes absolutely ages, and it ain't fun at all. It's something I do in most X-RL7 songs, but on this one I was like, maybe I could just program it. And I decided, nope, I'm gonna put the effort in, I'm gonna do it. So I put the effort in, and all these tracks have a live guitar, which has been edited as I do. And I added a couple of extra lead guitars, which I will show you in a moment. And I decided, you know what? This song needs more synths. Come on, this is a cyberpunk project. More synths. So I added some cool stuff. At that point, I reached out to Zach Tuch, or Tush? I don't know. Anyway, I reached out to Zach, and the way I found him is because he worked in the same studio as the dude who mixed Spirit Box, and I love Spirit Box. And I listened to his work, and I thought he had some really cool stuff. In his mixing, he only offered 2 revisions, and then you have to pay for each additional revision, which is something, in retrospect, I should have been like, maybe that's a tricky one. Because typically with mixing, you get the mix, and you can make some notes to change things, and usually you get an unlimited number of revisions, or quite a lot. So, I'll change this, and then they do it. It's like, okay, well, I'll just change this as well. Okay, put that back, and you can rein it in and get it to where you need it to be. And I am someone that, with mixing and mixing notes, I get very passionate. very passionate, very emotional about it. And it's like, if, you know, my song, My Baby, ain't sounding quite right, then it can be a challenge, you know. It's like, oh my God, come on, you know, and it can be a bit frustrating, and you got to rein these things in. Michael is just like me. He also gets very passionate about the mixes, and has a lot of notes, even with editing. When you got two people like that, it can be, yeah. So naturally, we got to the end of those revisions. There's still maybe a couple of things that, you know, whatever on the back of our minds, but overall it was sounding really good. And Zach did a fantastic job. He did a really great mix. But as I say, like, different mixers mix in different ways, and I think, at least judging by this song and some of his previous work, Zach does some really great, you know, rock guitar orientated stuff. And the synth elements, I felt, kind of maybe got a bit buried in the mix. So there's some cool stuff going on that's maybe not so obvious when you hear the track. And I'd like to show you some of those things now. So join me as I look through the stems in the Dropbox folder. Right, here we go. Chorus pad. We've got some really fuzzy rhythm stuff. Now you can hear that in the track. But yeah, this is the main thing I added, like during the main riffs, there's some cool synths there. And also during the verses and pre-chorus. So I think in the final mix, those synths were very thin, so you could sort of hear them as sort of this higher frequency that you can kind of feel more than really articulate. And that was actually one of the notes in the revisions. Can we get a bit more synth and a bit more body on the synths? But it's that thing where, as I say, sometimes when you work with a mixer, you're kind of within the gravity of their style. And that was one thing where, you know, they're there, but you just feel them rather than directly hear them. What else we got? Let's have a look at the guitar. This won't have delay on it, so this will sound a bit plain. But yeah, so extra guitar in the chorus. And the outro rotary riff. Sounds a little bit wonky at the end. You know, I could have played that better maybe. But when you hear it with delay, that kind of masks it. And you know what? In listening back to like the guide the other day, I was like, okay, you know, there's the closing line is too small for me now. But I was listening back, and it kind of sounds like I'm saying too small for meow. I don't know. What do you think? Meow. Now let's talk about With You. With You is the pop version of Cyanide 6, where they've had songwriters muddling with their sound and kind of taming them a little bit, making them a bit more accessible to a wider audience. And yeah, it's actually kind of fun to delve into pop writing, more pop. There's some tracks, obviously, you know, we've had some more chilled songs on the show. I think it sounds really cool. I think there's some cool melodies. Oh yeah, here's the mic vocal version, because I think it's quite interesting hearing how the original version of the chorus sounded, where I flipped to falsetto and went to a certain vibe. So let's drive away, right out of this town. And the way Michael handled it, where he went in full voice, like high B, and gave it a bit more of a rock flavor to it. So let's drive away, right out of this town. And I remember I asked Roman Marisak of Professional Murder Music, actually voices MiXE, the producer in the series, if he had any ideas for extra synths to contribute. So he contributed a few parts. Whoa, edit, I forgot to mention the string section. I programmed in a string arrangement which I think really nicely complements the chorus, and it sounds a little something like this. One benefit of things taking a while as well is at one point, I thought, well, you know what, it's cool with like, one male vocalist all throughout, but maybe it would be interesting to have some female vocals. So I actually asked Charlie, who voices Tess, the other producer, to contribute some vocals as well and do some backing stuff. And she's just got such a phenomenal voice, and she just did an amazing job. If you want to actually hear more from Charlie in X-RL7, there's a song called Written in the Stars, which is a song which was originally written for the character the Duke on the Gatekeeper EP, and that has Charlie and a vocalist named Bridget Hill, who voices Tina, contributing backing vocals. And that song was written for Mikey Ultra-Red, and it didn't get done in time for that release, so it's kind of been on the shelf. But you can hear the version with my guide vocals and their vocals mixed by Kevin Coppola in the Patreon. And just between you and me, I think this track is coming back at some point, maybe this year, because Mikey has done some vocals to it now and they sound great.
So the song With You really represents Jared's descent into corporate slavery, and he might get a little out of control himself moving forward, who knows. And if he does, perhaps he might sympathize a bit with Alfie and have a little bit of humility and repentance for firing him back in the day, for not fully understanding all of the shadowy influences that descend upon you when you rise up to District 1. So we'll have to see, but I do think that Plastic People, it represents the ascent out of that, and that's a song content-wise near and dear to my heart because it's all about shadowy conspiracies to socially engineer society, to try to get people to buy a bunch of stuff they don't need through fear-mongering, and using the entertainment industry to push all of these messages that coincide with that agenda. Now, that kind of stuff would never happen in real life, especially not over the last couple of years, but it does make for entertaining storylines. But moving forward, if I were to render my vision of Jared and Cyanide 6 in the show, I would hope that Jared would reconcile with Alfie, get back on his team under his management, team up with Omega, and really just form their own company to stick it to the Duke and go right at him and try to take him out. Now, whether that will happen or not, I don't know. If that sounds like a good idea to you, then you should get on your keyboard right now and type Mike a bunch of very forceful emails requesting that, perhaps demanding it, and maybe it will happen. Who knows? But for now, the fate of Jared and Cyanide 6 remains a mystery, so you'll just have to keep watching and find out.
And Out of Control, the Silverman remix. So Silverman is Richard Kay of Machine Rocks, aka Psychostick, who, come on, you know him from the series, he's awesome. And Rich did a fantastic remix of Out of Control in a more synthy kind of vibe. I think it just sounds fantastic. I really love it, and I guess I don't have a whole lot to say about the remix because Rich just took that and nailed it. And I guess I said stuff about this track already in a previous Backstage video relating to episode 3 and Out of Control. We were originally talking about doing an acoustic version of Out of Control for the EP, but just logistics and time, we ended up saying still wanting to get that song in some form with the other Cyanide songs, because all the Cyanide 6 songs in one place, but something different, and we ended up getting a remix, and it sounds really cool. So that's the track by track of the Cyanide songs. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying the tracks and checking it out, and on Spotify or Bandcamp or wherever you like. And of course, you know, on Patreon, where there's tons of these alternative versions. Yeah, you can hear the mixes of all the different mixes, the alternative versions of Plastic People, the instrumentals, the guide vocal, lots of stuff there. So I guess I'll wrap this up now and just say thank you so much for your interest in X-RL7, for supporting the show, for watching, for listening, for being a part of this great Pixar journey. And a big shout out to the Patreon crew, because you guys are incredible, and all the support really, really, really helps. I mean, check out all these mixes that I've had to use, jeez. So I'll sign off here. Thank you so much, and catch you later.